China. Let's bring back Derek Scissors, Asia economist at the American Enterprise Institute. Derek, the last couple times we talked, it was more about how the president had gone much tougher on Mexico and Canada than maybe people originally had assumed, maybe a little softer on China. Where do you think things stand now?
Well, I'm sure wherever they stand now, they'll be different in 3 days, but I'll give it a shot. We get these sector announcements because there had been rumors that there wouldn't be any announcements on tariffs on sectors. I don't think the president is ready to back off on pretty much anyone yet. I think we're still in the try to pressure everyone, try to make a big announcement on April 2nd, back it up with these sector announcements that you guys reported earlier, and get people to make their best deal. And the catch with China is among the countries that can make a good deal. They can offer the U.S. a good deal. They have the government capacity to do that, but they may not want to. There are some countries that don't have the capacity. There's some countries that want to. China has the capacity. They may not want to make a deal. So I think everybody's getting pressure. And then the next step is, what do the Chinese want out of this?
What do they want?
I don't think they're as sensitive to U.S. pressure as we often see. Xi Jinping has done a lot of things to his own economy by himself that have been harmful. So I don't think the U.S. taking action against him is that much of a worry. I don't think he cares that much about consumption or prosperity. And so normal, conventional U.S. pressure doesn't seem to matter. The Chinese Communist Party, of course, loves stability. And now they have a high emphasis on technological advance. So if we don't see hard U.S. export controls, but we do see high tariffs, I think Xi Jinping can live with that. There are certain U.S. actions that matter more than others. It's not about conventional economic growth. It's about the supply chain and technology. China and the U.S. might make a deal, but instead of a grand bargain where everybody cooperates, they make a grand bargain not to touch each other's most sensitive areas.
So if the most important thing for them is leading-edge NVIDIA chips, for instance, should the U.S. allow them to have access to that, or should we worry or not trust them or act suspicious towards them? And how does Taiwan factor into all of this in the background? I mean, do you think it's going to remain important to this administration to defend Taiwan at all costs?
I definitely don't think it's going to remain important to this administration. President Trump is very deliberately cagey when you ask him about Taiwan. Meanwhile, President Biden, who was cagey about a lot of things, was very definitive about Taiwan. There's been a very clear shift in the tone of U.S. policy where President Trump doesn't want a war. He doesn't want China attacking Taiwan. That would upset him, but I don't think he will defend Taiwan. As a result, the U.S. is moving and should move towards more chip independence. The Chinese are doing the same thing. And so, you've got to decide, are we in a competition with China or are we friends? If we're friends, we can help them. But if we're in a competition, if we're trying to win, no, we shouldn't be giving them NVIDIA or other chips.
So in other words, the concern that this administration might have about giving China or about the Taiwan supply chain is not because they're concerned about Taiwan being taken over by the Chinese. It's simply that they would care that those chips end up being manufactured in Chinese territory instead of Taiwanese territory.
Well, I mean, it's a multidimensional threat. I think the president has been very, very consistent that he just wants to do as much manufacturing as possible here, period. And then chips are particularly important within that. Then we have the situation of what if the Taiwanese chip plants are blockaded or destroyed? And finally, we have a threat, a longer-term threat from Chinese chip supply as the Chinese try to move up the technology ladder. We're going to see low-end Chinese chips flooding the market next year or the year after for sure. So I think the dominant strategy for the U.S. is to become more chip independent. And it's hard to become chip independent if you're helping China while you're doing it. And
it's hard to become chip independent when you're kind of starting from such a small level, right? And unless you're willing to commit a lot of capital to that or to really encourage, private enterprise to do so.
Yeah, I mean, President Trump seems to think that tariffs will magically cause manufacturing capacity in the U.S. to appear. And to be blunt, they have costs, but tariffs will help manufacturing capacity appear if they're sustained long enough in a consistent fashion. But that's not enough, and that's why there was something like the Chips and Science Act to subsidize semiconductor production. There are people who want to do this with shipbuilding. If the U.S. wants certain sectors to come back where we have struggled recently, it can't be just tariffs. It also has to be tax incentives, environmental policy, and so on.